it's a difficult moral compass that you have to deal with. There was certain criminal cases that I did not want to be a part of. It's hard to unsee things that you've seen.
We were actually doing a case where our defendant had conspired to put a hit on his defense attorney.
I think I had about 250 cases.
Oh,
and that was
moly.
just me. I couldn't be 100% mom. I couldn't be 100% wife. I couldn't be 100% partner.
They might not be buddies.
Correct.
In a couple of years when there's $275 million at stake.
I know this is going to sound terrible because some people don't agree with me, but there are moments where you have to kind of control yourself and say, okay, justice is going to play out.
Welcome to the Miami Common Law Podcast, where we discuss business law and litigation as seen through Miami's entrepreneurial and cultural lens. I'm Jesus La Rosa, a Florida licensed attorney and the host of the Miami Common Law Podcast. Although this show is hosted by my law firm, La Rosa Law PA, it is not part of my legal practice. It is, however, my effort to have some fun, nerd out with my peers, and share zero-cost insights and entertainment for Miami's entrepreneurs and legal community. Our goal is to help business owners avoid mistakes and to create value for lawyers and clients alike. All right, guys, a little housekeeping. If you've not signed a contract with my firm, I'm not your lawyer. Also, laws change and jurisdictions differ. So if you've got any questions about anything we've said here today, please call a lawyer in your area. All right, with that, we'll get started. We're going to pivot right into my guest today, which is Janina Salman. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so excited to have you. For the first time, a real attorney along with me. Typically, we have law clerks on the show, but today we get the great honor of having one of our counsel from the firm here. So thank you very much for doing this. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's my first podcast ever. So that's always an exciting stage in my life. Another bucket list cross off.
There you go. Well, hopefully the first of many. Hopefully this will be a recurring thing. Thankfully we don't do these so often that it gets in the way of our production, right? We're at a very conservative once a month pace and we switch off so it can still be kind of an elevated experience, but hopefully a unique experience and something that we all get, something a little bit out of each time. So let's, by way of introduction, I don't want to, assume anything. I don't want to put any words in your mouth. So let's go way back. Let's go way back to the idea. Why law? What inspired this journey for you? I know that we've spoken about this. Isn't that the first time I'm hearing this, obviously, but pretend I haven't heard it before. I recall it's way early in life. So take me through that process. How did this come about?
So it all started when my parents came here from Cuba. My mom came when she was 12 years old. My dad came when he was 8. And they went to Coral Gables Senior High. They were high school sweethearts. And lo and behold, fast forward to graduation from high school, they decided to get married. And early 20s, they had me. Early on in life, my parents told me, you have two choices in life. You're a doctor or you're a lawyer.
Oh, no.
Those are your only two choices. I don't do well with medical supplies, and so I guess lawyer was the route that I was going to choose. Luckily for them, around 4th grade, I remember just being in class on the playground and seeing kids, and I always felt it was my duty. It was upon me to stand up for kids and, stand up for who was right and who was wrong, even if it wasn't my business. And I always did it in a very neutral manner that kind of just set the tone. Nobody was ever mad at me. Actually, everybody was friends with me, but I was very good at solving problems early on. And I think I kind of felt that was my calling. So I just knew,
Early on,
4th grade.
Like
I
playground.
knew playground scuffles, I was able to resolve them.
Just a strong sense of justice.
100%. 100%.
What is right? What is fair?
100%. Didn't matter who you were, where you came from. I was going to stick up for, whoever was in the right. So obviously my parents are very happy to realize that I was following in their decision for me to become an attorney. And that was just always my path. I went into high school. I went into undergrad. I was pre-law. And I did take a year off just because I knew that after law school, it was just going to be hard work.
After undergrad and before law school.
Exactly. I took a year off to just travel and have a lot of fun and, get a sense of the real world out there. Then, I kind of went into hiding for 3 years, went into law school and, 2010 graduated and became an attorney. And here we are 15 years later.
Wow. So a lot of details here are actually really interesting to me. The first it goes back to this sense of justice. So I know a lot of people, wink, wink, nod, nod, you know who you are, I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to disclose who, but I know a lot of people who have a very strong sense of justice, and that creates some friction in the world. And they get this constant reminder from the world and the people that love them that like life ain't fair. Right. So was there ever a moment growing up or during life school or where that, I mean, if you could remember, where that was the message, or do you recall at all struggling with that? Sort of like, okay, I know that you have a strong sense of justice and I know that things need to be a certain way for you, but like, pop, smack upside the head, like here's life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think more so, I will say being a mom, I think that's where you kind of see more of justice where, maybe, for example, yesterday my son came home. He's into this whole Labubu thing now because all the kids are. And I don't know what a Labubu is.
Me neither.
I don't have TikTok and I don't do all that. So I had to go research what a Labubu is. Luckily, I have a lot of friends with kids who know what Labubus were. And apparently it's kind of the craze at school. And he goes to a private school. All the kids know each other. There's top of the line security. And some kids stole a Labubu from his backpack hanging on the hallway.
Oh, hell no.
So, as a mother, you want to go in and punch somebody in the face. Like, that's just you get that desire of, oh my goodness, my baby. Like, how could somebody do something so terrible to him? Right. But, those are moments where you have to kind of control yourself and say, okay, justice is going to play out. And, I'm not going to overextend myself. I'm going to talk to him, let him know that there's good people in the world, there's bad people in the world, and we just have to make the right choices in life, and that's kind of the way I've always lived my life. Luckily for him, his teacher this morning was so offended of the events of yesterday that she's pulling security footage to see who was a culprit, right? So, in life, and I'm not talking about this example now because it's so recent and I felt it so in my heart, in my gut, in my soul last night. I felt so bad for my son. He never cries, and he was just so sad about this one incident. So, unfortunately, we live in a world where justice is constantly served, and sometimes it's not given to the right person, and you just have to learn to let it go and move on. But, when justice is on my side and I'm able to help out somebody, it makes me feel really good. And I think that's always kind of just been the way I am since I was in 4th grade.
Yeah, when you're right, it makes our job way easier, right? When
Correct.
The facts are on your side, it's like 100%. Amazing. And what a good example, right, to set for your kids to be like, look, you know what, we're not going to go crazy here. We're going to let justice take its course. Let's trust that, the school staff or whatever are going to, do their job. And what a great example in the school teacher to take a personal interest in. Man, I remember when they stole Pokemon cards from my backpack in Meadow Lane Elementary. All justice had to come from me, man. I rampaged through other dudes' backpacks, and I struggled with that too, a little less so than some of the people that I was referring to earlier. But yeah, I mean, also now in our practice, we serve a community that's not, they're not publicly traded companies, right? They're people who are luchando, right? Mm-hmm. They're out there, they're doing their best. And sometimes, we've had, again, making our job really easy. We've had really good luck with clients who are just right. Who are it's just like, it's kind of obscene how right they are sometimes. But anyway, going back to this other piece of the intro that I found very interesting is the gap year that you took after undergrad and before law school. I didn't have that wisdom. I didn't have somebody to pull me to the side and be like, hey, bro, life is long, so
it's going to get much more difficult from now on.
Right. Like take a moment to breathe and reassess. So I studied philosophy in undergrad, and I went right in. I graduated in May and I started law school in that August, right? Like I literally graduated. I had a month and Callie and I, my wife, we did like a 1 month road trip. So we did at least that, but we didn't take a year. So the question is this, like, what did you do in the year? Where did you travel? What did you learn? What are moments from that year that you find yourself thinking back to and like appreciating, like, okay, I'm really happy I did that. Or am I totally wrong and it was a fool's errand and you wish you would have started right away? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a myth.
Honestly, I wish I could have done 2 years. Okay. It was fantastic. I was not married at that time. I ended up meeting my husband after law school. So I was single. I had, my group of girlfriends who most of my girlfriends didn't go to law school, the ones that I grew up with my entire life, and we went to undergrad together. So they were in between deciding if they were going to stay in Miami, go to New York.
Where did you go for undergrad?
I went to University of Miami.
Okay. Well, that's a sick place to go. First of all, as an undergrad, what year placed me kind of like what like general decade?
Let's see. I graduated high school in 2002.
Okay.
So I started 2002 and then through 2006.
My God. So it was like the late part of party till 1999. The iPhone's not out yet.
And no, we had Blackberries.
And you're at UM, baby.
UM. It was the life. We would study by the lake, getting a suntan while we were getting, if anybody knows the Rat, that's where, they would serve us lunch and beers. And, we would have that by the water and get suntan while we were studying before going to philosophy class and taking our exam.
Incredible.
It was a good life.
And
I still needed a year off before law school. So
I hear that. So did you, so obviously you knew you were going to go to law school, but did you take the LSAT before you took your gap year, or did you just like, all right, I'm just going to refresh and then come back and reassess?
Correct. I decided, I said, you know what? I know it's going to happen, but you know what? Why put everything on the table right now? I'll take my time. I traveled. We spent, some time out on the West Coast, LA. I spent some time in Italy, which I love going to. Actually, I remember I took the ethical exam. And the next day was my flight to Italy. I was like out of there. I was like, I'm out. I'm ready. I was already on vacation mode.
That's interesting.
I did a lot of New York because I had already friends that had moved to New York. They were doing PR. They had joined different. So they had a great party scene up there with all the different events. So, I did a lot of local travel, and I only did Italy. That was my only European over my 1 year off. And then I knew once, 2007 started, I was jumping into law school, and I went to Nova, and I did my 3 years and just took the bar right after. And I think it's the second year that you can start working. First year they don't allow you. So I took an internship just so that I already started getting, my feet wet, figuring out what area of law I would practice in.
And this would have been like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, 2008 was when I started my first internship.
Whoa, that was a rough time to get out of law school.
To get out of law school,
people were writing like JD's A Scarlet Letter. Exactly. Back in the day, people were like on YouTube poo-pooing.
It was one of those, where, we have a big economic issue. There's no work for attorneys, so we'll pay you, $50,000. As a first year student.
Sure.
So, it was a tough time. Luckily, because I did, start interning, and even though, when I started off, I was doing real estate, foreclosures, and credit card defense. So that's what I was doing. Nothing what I ended up doing later on in my practice.
Interesting.
But I kind of just wanted to see what was out there. So I tried that out. I was lucky I got a position with them, and I just kind of kept working from there on out. And then I've worked ever since.
So when you say credit card defense, is this representing folks who have credit cards, or is it? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So folks that have credit card debt, back then, I don't know if it's still applicable. Most of the agreements were based out of Delaware because they had the most leniency for, obviously, the credit card companies. So that's what I was doing, and dealing with foreclosures. There was a lot of foreclosures at that time as well.
Interesting. So yeah, let's get into it. So you get into law school, you do this internship, then you get right into doing some of this work right around the economic crisis. So it's not the hottest legal market.
Correct.
I got this weird luck when it came to this, where the legal market contracted basically for the next 10 years after that.
Right.
Where like every year after that, law school applicant numbers went down.
Correct.
Basically uncontrollably. And when I applied in 2016, it was like the lowest peak, and it was the beginning of what became a wave.
Right.
That I realize now peaked during like the COVID stimulus packages, like what they call in tech peak ZERP, because it was just like money everywhere, and the lowest interest rates, and so I think that definitely had something to do with some of the risks that I took in starting the firm too, and then obviously the package that I got out of Iowa. But it's just interesting to think about like how these macro cycles could affect the individual choices that individual practitioners make in their, in their practices and the risks that they take. So I think that's interesting. So you start doing the credit defense. Then how do you, I know that you at some point did insurance defense. So what was that pivot? How long did it take to get there? And then what was that like?
So after I did what I was doing, I went into criminal defense, right? Because I thought that was my call to justice.
I don't remember that in the interview.
Nope,
That's okay.
No, that was
so
very
you saw
early.
the shows. You were like, dude, nothing's more just than criminal defense. Okay, tell me about that.
That's where I thought I was going. The problem with criminal defense is, it's a difficult moral compass that you have to deal with, right? Mm-hmm. You have some people that are completely innocent, or that maybe committed a crime that's something that's a slap on the wrist, right? It's not too terrible. Then you have other ones that get a little bit more, for lack of a better term, interesting. And it's hard to unsee things that you've seen. So, early on I decided there was certain criminal cases that I did not want to be a part of. I just knew that it wasn't for me. It wasn't something that I ever wanted to see and then not be able to unsee. So I chose to stay away from those cases, and my boss was very kind. He was very understanding. But you're working with criminal defense. And honestly, I will say, as a young attorney, the best way to get any court experience is to go into criminal defense, because you are in that courtroom front and center no matter what, day in, day out. So, and they move fast. These prosecutors and these state attorneys, they're moving fast, and you're just, one little criminal defense attorney that has to keep up with everyone. So it's really good experience in the courtroom. I ended up leaving there just because I realized criminal defense wasn't for me, and I went into.
But wait, I want to pause here. I want to pause in the criminal. I want to bracket this discussion, because I think we all of us, like, watch me. I'm going to be a lawyer, right? Get it in our head that we're going to do at some point criminal defense, right? That's kind of like the sine qua non. Like, this is the stereotypical attorney. Lawyer's lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. Like, are you even a lawyer if you're not a criminal defense lawyer? Right? You tell somebody's a lawyer, they're thinking like, oh, like, he's O.J. Simpson's lawyer or something like that. Yeah. So I had a similar moment. So I actually worked for the state attorney's office in their cybercrimes unit, going back to some cases you don't want to be involved with. Right. What the cybercrimes unit deals with a lot is a lot of CP. Right. And I was just like, not doing that, bro. Not looking at that all day.
That's the case that I told my boss, because we were on the defense side of one of those. Okay. And I didn't want to deal with that at all.
Yeah, no chance. Yeah. No chance. The other thing is, so I was there, and we were actually doing a case when I was there where our defendant had conspired to put a hit on his client or on his defense attorney. So we were prosecuting the guy for another thing, but also for trying to get his defense attorney killed, which you would think was a very interesting case. Right. I was bored to death. Yeah. Oh my God, I could not take it. I was like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this. Yeah. And so there was a lot of things. And the other thing is, you're right, the volume of work. I mean, as an intern when I was there, I wasn't even in law school yet. I wasn't doing the fun stuff, but it's remarkable to me, these young lawyers that become ASAs, assistant state attorneys, how quickly they throw them into the docket, into the misdemeanor docket, then the felony docket, and they're just doing arraignment after arraignment, hearing after hearing. I mean, they show up and they have
that box with
they have a box, they have a spreadsheet of cases that the judge is going, okay, case such and such, for this, and it just becomes like a for them. It's almost a script.
A script. You took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly
it's like da-da-da, the state does this and that. Okay, the defense da-da-da.
And did it take you a while to learn the lingo? Because when I got in there and the first time they were speaking, I was like, I don't understand anything that they're saying.
I was like, what is going on here? But you get it. We're quick. Mm-hmm. So you get, it's so autonomous, right? It's so automatic after a while that it took some of the shine out of it. Right. I was like, this is just
pushing papers.
These people might as well be wiping their butt, dude. Mm-hmm. I was like, what is going on here? I mean, I was like, and then the other thing about my personality too is, me, I'm a fun guy, right? I become friends with my clients. I've taken my clients go-karting and, we go to brunch and I take them out instead of whatever, like reserving a conference room at Regis for $150. I'm like, how about we have tapas and a couple glasses of wine, because it costs the same, and we're gonna get this, the same amount of work done, right? And so I thought, like, do I want my clients to basically be some strong percentage of them to be criminals,
right?
To be like actual criminals. And I'm like, I'm totally the kind of lawyer that I'm like friends with my clients.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know if we can, I don't know if that's a good future call for me. So I was like, okay, for that reason also, we're not doing that. So that's exciting. So, okay. So you were telling me you went in a different direction. Please proceed.
I did. Then I went into, up until now, my 1 year of plaintiff work. And that's when I started doing, because I had the criminal background, they still needed a couple of criminal cases, especially for Spanish-speaking clients. And I had that. The other attorney, he didn't speak Spanish, and he did not want to touch criminal cases. I had the experience, so I didn't really mind. And that's when I started doing a lot of bodily injury and personal injury protection cases. And that was my first experience.
What year would this have been?
This would have been probably about 2012.
Oh, this is when there was gold at the end of that rainbow.
Oh, yes.
When there was a lot of gold at the end of that rainbow.
The volume was, I think I had about 250 cases.
Holy
and that was
moly.
just me. And there was the other attorney as well.
Wow.
I mean, we had a lot of clients with a lot of cases. And insurance companies would pay back then. It was a good time.
Must be nice.
It was a good time where, if you had a case and it was a valid case, the insurance company was going to pay. Obviously, maybe they had some questions, and that's how we ended up in litigation. But it was a good time, and I had also had a great boss mentor, and she was very type A, which I can appreciate because I am. And, she had cameras in her office, and she would listen into my depositions. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, make sure that they were 3 hours long. And I was asking all the questions, which, you know what? I'm thankful now. At the moment, I wasn't thankful. I was like, this is a little intense. Right. But I am thankful now because, you know what? She made me ask the right questions, and she made me get to the bottom of the cases, and we were able to get great results for our clients, which I really think is what made her firm stand out.
That's so important.
It was.
That's so important.
It was.
Which is doing the work.
Doing the work.
And being rigid. Yes. And like not settling for like B work.
Yeah.
Right.
And unfortunately, you have a lot of, young associates that came in. Me, for example, she didn't know me. She didn't know my work ethic. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame her for wanting to keep the name of her company highly regarded. So she had to do what she had to do. And when she was able to trust me, she kind of let go of the reins. I didn't have to hand her my outlines at the end of depositions. But again, I'm grateful for the experience I had with her. And after that, I did kind of switch gears into insurance defense. And
so that's interesting because you would have been at a time in plaintiff's work, which is now universally regarded as the gold rush, right? When insurance companies spend, and I bring you on, I mean, in full disclosure, and you know this, but the audience might not, because although we do commercial litigation, sometimes our entrepreneurs, they trust us, they establish some rapport, and then they go, hey, they might call us and be like, do you do plaintiff's work? Do you do PIP work? Do you do guardianship? Do you do probate? And we're like, well, we can, and you're a good client. You like us and we like you. So let's look into it. Right. And so I started dabbling with PIP and personal injury and stuff. And I realized like, oh no, like I need somebody who knows what they're doing. Like this isn't, so I bring you on and thank you because you're doing that same thing that mentor. I mean, of course it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but because I'm a big picture person and I'm kind of like, all right, shoot from the hip. I do it. And the people that, at least from law school, that may watch this don't know this about me. Like I would rather like pay for and have that structure imposed upon me. Of course. Right. So I've had a lot of mentors up to this point, and I've been pretty good about being like, okay, you know what you're doing. You know what's up. Come in here. Let's collaborate, instead of it being like a less equal power dynamic. It's like, you know what, let's do this as equals. Let's be a sounding board for each other, and like call me on my BS And I try to do the same, but it's always in a collaborative thing. So you're in the gold rush.
Yes.
And you decide, I'm going to go work for the insurance companies. So talk me through that decision at that time. What year would that have been, like 14, 15?
No, earlier. That would have been, so I graduated 2010. So probably around 2012, 2013, I might say. So, funny enough, and in full disclosure, I met my next boss, which I was with for very many years, because she was an opposing counsel on a case. And we worked very well. We got the job done. She represented the insurance company. I obviously represented, the insured. And we just hit it off. And, they had a job opening. And she did reach out to me. And she says, if this is something you're interested, I appreciate the way you work and I would love to have you on my team. And so, I did. I went for an interview after that. Her and I stopped all communications about anything further related to that case.
Of course.
And it was a very smooth transition. It was no hard feelings. It was just a better opportunity. I was going from, a small practice to, a huge defense firm,
of course.
Which is not always the best case for attorneys,
Right.
getting lost in this numbers. But at that time,
But this would have been a time in your career where you're like, let's get this bag.
Exactly.
Like,
Plus,
let's go.
You know what? There was so much case. I mean, I would spend hours in the courthouse. I got to be that, ASA prosecutor,
Right.
that was just like, all right, give me your documents. This is what we're doing. Let's give this to the judge. Like, you can move on your way. I don't really need you here.
Right.
Just when you go into pre-trials, when you're at the beginning of the case, when it's just filed, it's just paperwork. And, I was kind of that person kind of going through the script and the motions. Now, what makes it interesting is, like we discussed, you're not dealing with criminals, you're dealing with people that were injured, and, you're looking for the best case scenario for both them and the insurance company. No one's ever going to be 100% happy. The insurance company is going to have to pay. Sometimes the insured might have to take a little less. But I felt that I was, and I know this is going to sound terrible because some people don't agree with me, but on the right side of justice.
Sure.
For this case, because a lot of people see the defense firms and the insurance companies as kind of the big bad wolf. But not if you get the right case, not if you have a legitimate case, and not if you have a good attorney that's going to advocate for both sides. If I'm not going to put, let's say for the insurance companies, I wasn't going to put them through a ringer on a case that I knew had to settle ultimately because they were injuries and they were documented, and it's going to be in their best interest to resolve the case rather than litigate and pay attorney's fees, and not have a good outcome. So, I don't think that I was working for the enemy as many people like to see it at that time. I think I was definitely on the side of justice, making sure that cases that needed to be settled and resolved were, and cases that needed to be litigated were. I actually had defense verdicts, which is not very common when you're doing PIP cases.
Yeah.
So, obviously I did something right. And I think that, my track record shows that. So I did insurance defense. I did bodily injury cases. Eventually, I started getting into first-party property cases. So I had a lot of those just because I had the insurance background. And it was kind of a shift in the industry, as well as
this is when the gold rush started to go away a little bit. The word on the street was the insurance companies aren't paying.
PIP is ending. There's not going to be any more PIP, which, the law changed. Now it's not, a provider can't bring the lawsuit. It has to be brought by the insured, and you can't just assign, the benefits so that, they can collect on your behalf. So the law changed a little bit. It's still up and running. It's not going anywhere.
I got buddies that are still securing.
Still, it's still up and running. It didn't go anywhere. It's still there. It's just a different strategy, a different litigation tactic.
But this is interesting about representing the insurance companies. So a lot of people, at least in our industry, and commonly, I would think if you asked a juror, it's a little bit like working. They would tell you that it's a little bit like working for the Empire, for the Death Star, like dun, 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 dun,
I was the one coming with the black robes,
right?
And like the hook, like oh, there she comes.
That's funny, but for some people at the right time of their life, it can be really meaningful work. I worked for a life insurance company briefly during a summer, and then they kept me on for a spring. And I mean, while I was there, at least doing the in-person work, the remote work was more difficult. If you're working for a life insurance company, you're so removed from the product. If you're just like counsel, that if you're going in person, you create relationships with the people there, and you find a way to get involved. But what you're working for a life insurance company, and then you're also remote. At least for me, it was a little bit hard to find the meaning and purpose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not ever listening to a claims call.
Right, you're like double removed.
Right. What is the bottom? Like, what service am I providing for society other than like providing a compliance check mark, you know? So that was a little rough, but it did kind of give me a glimpse into corporate America, which wasn't bad, but it did inform my decision about how I would proceed. So, okay. So you do the insurance defense work before you go and do first party property, which is, house insurance basically. You become somewhat of an expert though in the insurance defense work, or did that come first? Did you do first party property for a long time, or did you do insurance defense?
Most of my work was bodily injury and personal injury protection, and I think the property, that came later just because of the shift. Mm-hmm. Let's just say I have more years under my belt doing insurance defense, dealing with, injuries and car accidents and that slip and falls and that type of stuff.
Hopefully that accrues to our benefit.
Yeah.
There's some plans in the works for that. So that's good. Okay. So then talk me through then, you come in, you got the sword and the shield, you're hacking at everything. What happens at what point? Because I'm kind of going through this now, where it's like, all right, I'm gonna start having babies. like I'm ready to have a family. Like, because when you're doing this level of work, when you're doing insurance defense work for a big firm with hundreds of cases and potentially 3 figures of associates and whatever, like, what are you doing? 60, 70-hour weeks?
More.
Yeah. So
more, and that's billable work.
That's
Right?
billable
work, right? And it's just the hours we were putting in were absurd.
Like not child rearing
correct
hours, right?
Correct.
So what happens, right? So what is the shift in life, right? That tells you know what? I think I'm fed up. Is it like I just paid off my loans? Like I think I could go do something else.
I'll tell you my personal story.
Sure.
My husband and I, we met a year later. He proposed, which I thought was insanely early. But I'm not complaining.
So lucky.
I'm not complaining, but I thought it was very quick. And then a year later, we were married, right? So we had been together for 2 years. He has sisters. They both had children. My cousins they were just having babies. So we were kind of like the last kids on the block. And we were like, well, we want our kids to grow up with, our family. Like, we want all the kids to be close in age. So, fast forward, I took him on. He's not from Miami, obviously. So I took him on his first cruise for his birthday. Oh. And we were sitting at dinner on his birthday. And he's like, so do you think we're ready for kids? And I look at him and I'm like, are you ever ready? Like, I'm full on in my career. I'm really doing so well. I can't imagine stopping, but I can't imagine not starting a family. Right. So I was kind of in that moment of, all right, let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And, lo and behold, 10 months later, here we are. I had my first son.
So it wasn't like you guys were like, all right, let's make the shift. It was like, okay, it's going to be too difficult to consciously do that. Let's just not actively try not to.
Exactly. And
see then
what
make
happens.
The necessary shifts.
Right.
So then 10 months later,
I have a little boy.
You have a little boy. And then that's like, if you've not gotten your affairs in order, from what I hear, right? Like, I don't know any, this is partly like what I want to ask you. Cause I'm in the stage with my wife where we're like, maybe we stop actively trying not to. And what does that mean? Right? Like, nanny, yay or nay. By grandma, yay or nay.
So, grandma, I mean, that's a whole other topic,
So,
So
walk me through some of those decisions.
So let's see. I went back to work after 12 weeks, right? So I took 12 weeks of my maternity leave. Luckily, we did
12 weeks.
12 weeks. It's not
My
even 3
goodness.
months.
Yeah.
Okay. So, luckily, the firm I was with, I had been there for so long. So I had a great structure in place for maternity leave. And they were so kind, really, when the baby was born, sending me gifts. They were very, very kind. And they seriously honored my maternity leave. They did not bother me with one case. Obviously, at that time, I was just an associate. I wasn't, partner level or anything. So I appreciated them kind of taking a step back as my first baby. So 12 weeks, I decide I'm going to get a nanny. I love my mom. I love my mom more than anything in this world. I'm an only child. But I don't think I can have my mom in my house every day, all day
Okay.
with my first child. Now, with my third child, I'm like, oh, come over every day, all day.
That's
But, with
interesting.
your first child, I was again, I'm type A, and I'm very strict on this is the schedule. This is when he needs to sleep. This is when he needs to eat. This is when he needs to play. This is what he needs to play. And, my mom's Cuban.
Right.
Deja que el niño duerma. Déjalo, si está jugando, yo lo voy a cargar. No, mom, this is like what 12 weeks, in my book, it says that I need to do this.
Right.
So, I was really gung-ho on a nanny, for good or for bad, I don't know. My kids are obsessed with my mom. I think they like her more than they like me. Like, she's just fun all the time. So, I did go the nanny route. After 1 year, the nanny was just like, oh, I'm going to go take care of my grandson. And I was just kind of like, thank you. It was a blessing in disguise. I really, I don't like having people in my space unless it's family. So, it was nice. I did put my son in a little school close to by the office so that I was able to take him to school before work and pick him up. So that worked out fine for me. I felt he was a little young to start school. He didn't walk yet, so I didn't really want to, but I didn't want to go with another nanny, right? So I don't know if it's good to go with a nanny, grandma, or school. I'm not the best judge of character on that one because I don't know what I would have done,
Right.
Fast forward to my second son.
You're still doing the 70 hours a week.
And I'm doing 70 hours a week, and it was in office.
My
So we're
God.
talking about different times.
So you're out of the door.
I'm out
6 in the morning.
Yes.
You're not back a minute before 6 p.m.
Nope.
So you're out 12 hours.
I was out of the house.
And your kid's like 1 year old.
And he's and
Wow.
then I would just come home to dinner, bath, and bed.
Wow.
So it's been
That's rough.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Especially because you're not raising your baby.
Right.
So it's a hard call. But he's a strong, sweet soul that I guess we did something right with him.
Amazing. Congrats. Yeah.
Fast forward to my second son. He was born April 2020, so a month into COVID, right? So at this time, I was still working in the office. I mean, and I work until the day I'm going to give birth. Like, there's no need not to.
Right.
And not for me, at least. I'm just one of those people that I'm like, I need to leave everything in order before I leave this office. So I did, it was 1 month before COVID comes out. Everyone's scared out of their mind, don't know what's going to happen. So I pull my now 2-year-old from school. I bring him home with me. I'm pregnant. My husband goes into the office, grabs my computers, my everything, brings it home. So now I'm working remotely with a 2-year-old while I'm 9 months pregnant. That was a very interesting time. So at that time, I was with a different firm and I was partner. So even though I took maternity leave, I was still on the phone every single day. Whoever needed me, at this point, I'm a second time mom. It's not the first time.
Right.
I'm partner. I didn't feel comfortable leaving the firm without someone overseeing the department. And I was the only partner in that department. So, I did bring on a good friend of mine actually to work with me at that firm. So I felt comfortable leaving the firm in good hands. And, but the same thing, my son was 12 weeks and I went back to work. I did hire a nanny for him who was like a family referral. So it was different.
Right.
And, but I had the baby at home with a nanny while I was working from home with my 2-year-old.
That's pretty cool. Cause then you're like in proximity, you have lunch and you're like, hey, what's up? You might have
it is,
a
but
moment
it isn't.
together.
I'll tell
Okay.
you
Well,
the
tell me
truth.
about that. Tell me about that.
So and you'll never experience this. You'll experience it in a different way, right? But obviously, after a woman has a baby, her hormones are crazy. And anytime you hear that baby crying, it's so overwhelming. And then you have a 2-year-old next to you asking you, like, how do you do the ABCs? And you're just like, I don't know, figure it out. I'm in a mediation, So, and it was a hard time for me because I was stuck in the house all day. I was still scared to really be going out because everyone's like, if you go out, you're going to get COVID. So it was a scary time. My husband would go out of the house every day for work. So he at least got that, I don't want to say an escape because you never want to escape your children, but he got a moment for himself.
Well, it's about focus too. It's about focus. Like you're not, I'm not saying that it's the heart, we're not brain surgeons, right? But you're doing neither at a high level. Correct. If you're doing both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't be 100% mom. I couldn't be 100% wife. I couldn't be 100% partner because I was being divided into 3. So I would, after the kids go to sleep, I would stay up at night working. But then the next day I was so tired, I would need like 4 extra cafecitos just to get through the day and be able to, function. And I did see myself so tense and, I hope I didn't scar my children too bad. I mean, they love me really. So, I think I did okay for now.
I think you did all right.
At least it was that time where they don't really remember. So I think I'm okay. But, it's hard on anyone, whether
this is great to consider because as you know, everybody in our team is remote. And so maybe that would be a time to think about, maybe getting an office like a WeWork type of sitch where it's still a different location out of the home, so we can put in. I mean, I can put in the focus work, and I think also, I mean, my mom's great, and she sounds like it's exactly like your mom. My mom's like the closest a Cuban gets to being a hippie. She's just like just pure love and nurturing, and she'll definitely give the kids more calories than I tell her to, and there's no way in the world I'm gonna be able to treat her like an employee because she's just gonna do whatever the hell she wants. And on top of that, she's a doctor, so she's like, "Quien tú eres?"
You can't tell her anything she doesn't know.
Correct. But having said that, she's a hospitalist, so she's at the hospital basically for at least an hour every day. More so when she's on call, but and then Tuesday through Thursday she goes to the hospital and then goes to her clinic, and she's not out a minute before 3. So it's like she's like, no, don't worry about it. You can have a kid. We'll put the crib by my bed. But I'm like, but mom, like you have patience, right? And so I think for that, and obviously Callie's a professional and has work too, so it's a little bit like, okay, we take what we do seriously,
right?
So. And we're not going to take parenting less seriously.
Right.
So we're going to have a little bit of help. Thank God, though, because we're in Hialeah. The Hialeah nanny is like a different, it's like a different breed, right?
It's abuelita.
Than your typical, like if I was in Iowa and I was hiring a nanny, right? Because I went to Iowa and I was hiring a nanny, like that's a $40 an hour job.
Right.
Like a nanny in Iowa or Minnesota, one of these places makes like 60, 70K.
Oh, you'd be surprised about the nanny market right now, though.
Oh, yeah?
All the New Yorkers that came down, they really messed up our nanny situation.
Tell me.
Because I've been doing nannies since, for the last 7 years.
So tell me.
That price has increased. Now everyone's coming through agencies. And I luckily, my most recent nanny, because the nanny I had for my middle son, she was with us for 5 years. She's older, so she had to go back to Colombia and she had to get some back surgery. So unfortunately, she had to leave us, which was the hardest thing. So I did have to, hire a new nanny. And obviously, 3rd time around, I'm not going to mess up. And I went through a lot of interviews. And what these girls are asking for, I'm just like, wait, what? Like, that's how much you make and you don't do anything? I'm like, okay. And they weren't really warm and loving. And I luckily found one, and she has been a blessing, the kindest soul. She's been now with us for about 2-3 months, and
Oh, wow.
we just really got lucky. And
Congrats.
yeah, so it worked out for us.
Listen, my nannies are not going to know nothing about
agencies.
the agencies. Listen, my nannies are not going to speak English. First of all,
Most of the ones I interviewed didn't.
my
Oh,
God.
but they know about the agency.
Oh my God, that's
they all
scary.
talk. The nannies all talk. They all talk, and they're like, "¿Cuánto te pagan?" Oh yeah. You don't want to go to the playground on one of those holidays that the kids didn't have school that I was taking them to the playground.
Oh my
They're all
God.
talking.
I sound like an evil person. I'm not an evil person, guys. Okay.
But it's stuff to consider.
I think I will have to consider. Well, okay. Well, this has been great. I think that was a good intro. Is there any last little piece about intro before we get into the topic for today, which is our little pivot, right? Which is, look, we do commercial litigation, we help entrepreneurs, but sometimes, things come up, right? And so we have a little bit of experience. And so trust in estates has always been this thing that, we deal with people who, they've got their own business. They're doing well enough that where they can hire a law firm. We become that trusted source, and they're like, hey, do you do trust in estates? Do you do wills? Right. And, we have found ourselves thinking like, well, we can, right? Okay, what is it? So let's talk about this. So what is, most of our audience will be legal or legal adjacent, right? They will either be lawyers or entrepreneurs or people wanting to get in, either law students or lawyers or whatever. And so that's kind of who I'm planning with. So without babying them too much, what is a will? What is it solving for, right? What role is it playing in an ideal situation? What problem is it solving for?
So very simply, a will only advises a probate court how you want your property distributed. Okay. So you make sure you draft the will. You have, the necessary witnesses. There's obviously some things that need to be taken into consideration: the age of the person creating the will, as well as their sound mind. Make sure that that was done voluntarily. There was no coercion to create the will. Once you have a will in place, all it does is says, okay, here are my assets. Here is how I want them distributed. When I pass, the probate court will take over and make sure that my wishes are met. Wills are great. But is it a solve all? No. In my opinion, you need a will and a trust. Okay? When you have a will, it's great. Yes, you're telling the court, listen, this is what I want. This is how I want it to play out. But it still goes into probate. So your assets might be still held for a while. Okay? Now, if you have a trust in conjunction with your will, what that does is it automatically passes what your property is to the person that you've asked for it to be passed to, whether it be money, whether it be funds. It doesn't get caught up in the probate courts. Obviously,
that's such an important distinction that I think almost nobody realizes, because even when I do consults on this, people don't get this point. They're like, well, listen, I don't want people to fight over my assets, so let me do a will. But at the end of the day, if you just have a will and another trust, you're going to end up in probate because the judge is going to adjudicate your will.
Correct.
And they're going to have to litigate. And then we know the validity of the will, the coercion, was there undue influence, achievement, pero he convinced them, So what is, going back to first principles, what is the function of the trust? What's the interplay between the two? And how does it achieve this sidestep of the system, which is what typically the client wants to begin with?
Right. So the will, and what most people do is they do both simultaneously, right? So the will encompass all the property that you want to be distributed, and that will also be shown in the trust. Now, for example, if there's something that, maybe you have in the will that you don't even know how you want it to be distributed, you just know, okay, whoever's going to be surviving me, they can figure it out, it'll be divided. You don't have to necessarily include that in your trust. Now, the effect of a trust is that it just circumvents the probate court. And, if attorney has it, he can execute on that and make sure that, your wishes are complied with automatically.
So let's get into the anatomy of that a little bit, right? So you draft the will, you put together a trust with your T&E lawyer and your T&E team, And, one day, God forbid, but one day it's that day, it's your day, you pass, right? Let's say just around numbers, you have, let's say $50,000 in real estate, $50,000 in a combination of equities and liquid assets. What mechanistically happens? So this is stuff all under your name. To make this simple, you don't have a spouse, okay? Because, we can get into some complications there. You don't have a spouse, right? But you have extended family, right? You have beneficiaries that you have in your will. You may have some children, but people you've designated to be beneficiaries, and you've selected a trustee because you have to, right? So what happens? What happens to those assets at that point?
So when you have just a will, it's going to go to probate court, and the court is going to oversee how, even if you said, okay, 50,000 is going to my sister. She's my only surviving relative, and, I don't have any children. That's who the money is going to go to. Okay, well, the court will make sure that that money is going to be given to her, but it's not automatic, right? So, you might have someone contest the will. Maybe there's, a long lost sister you didn't know about.
And how long can this take?
And this can take months, if not years.
And so maybe that 50,000, 100,000 that you wanted to give to the sister,
stuck in limbo,
to pay for her mortgage.
Correct.
Maybe she can't pay her mortgage. She has to foreclose because she can't get the money because it's too little, too late, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what happens then if you do have a trust?
So if you have a trust and you leave it, executed with an attorney, that trust, it tells the attorney, listen, here's my trust. It's valid. It's all properly done. The 50,000 is going to just jump right over probate court and go straight to your sister. And she'll be able to manage the funds as she sees if, maybe she wants to pay off something that you have, well, those $50,000 will be hers because those were your last wishes, and she can do with them as she needs to.
So does the lawyer become the trustee basically for the trust in the interim? This isn't a big trust that we're talking about, $100,000, but, in the case where a trust might be worth $100 million, do you designate a trustee at the beginning when you create the trust, or does your sort of lawyer do that if you didn't do that already? And I'm asking genuinely. I genuinely don't actually know the answer to that question. So,
so here's a few things I'm going to go through.
Okay.
On the trust, right? So, how trusts avoid probate, right? So let's go back into that.
Okay.
So you have revocable living trust. Okay. And this is what I was talking about, that common way to avoid probate for assets that are transferred into the trust.
Okay.
So they have to be enumerated in the trust. Okay. So you'll remain in control of these assets as long as you're alive. And once you pass, okay, that's when the successor trustee distributes them according to the terms that you laid out in your trust.
That's the revocable piece, right? You could take it away
exactly.
while you're alive. Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
There's the trust that owns the assets, right? At your passing, the assets are held by the trust and are considered part of the trust's property, okay? They're not part of your estate. That's kind of like where the key difference is. So what that means is that's how they do not go through probate, right? Because now they're part of the trust. They belong to the trust, not to your estate.
Ah,
okay.
Got it.
So immediate distribution, and that's what we're talking about. And that's one of the key benefits of having a trust. Since those assets are not in probate, the trustee can distribute them to the beneficiaries in a much more rapid fashion than going through the probate process, which we all know can take a long time. There are exceptions, obviously, to having this trust and avoiding probate, right? So we talked about the assets that are not enumerated in the trust. You have assets that might be included in the will, and they're not transferred to this trust. So those, they will eventually go into probate. There's something called the pour-over will. This is to handle assets that were not transferred into trust, okay? So you can use this pour-over will. And what it does is this type of will directs any remaining assets to be moved into the trust, right? But these assets will have to go through probate before they can be transferred, right?
Interesting.
So it gets more complicated.
Yeah, I know. It's super complex.
It gets complicated, and that's why, it's obviously a case-by-case analysis.
Right.
The more specific you are into what is included from your will to your trust, the better position any, remaining relatives will be in at the time of your passing.
Well, let's discuss what I'm going to call really quickly before we get to the end of that outline. We're going to call this the Hialeah will. Right? This is a hypothetical will that Abuelito drafted, and he was at your birthday party. He was like, "Oye, mijo, come over here. Look what we got. Te dejé todo. You're my favorite. Mira, aquí dice que you're going to get everything when I die." Right? And he's like, "But I'm going to put it over here in la meseta under this thing here." He doesn't give it to you, right? He goes, because it's a Hialeah will. I mean, of course, right? Why not? Hey, look, man, here's a copy. It's signed in front of the two witnesses. It's been notarized. You know, such and such attorney drafted it for me, right? That would all be helpful. But, you know, Abuelito from Hialeah doesn't know any of that. So he puts it in a shoebox. He tells you, look, it's in this shoebox. And then Abuelito kills over. Oh, my God. And you realize he wasn't really Abuelito. He was just he was like your godfather, right? He was just like a family friend. He wasn't Abuelito. Oh my God! And then come out the real, let's say the grandchildren, the bio grandchildren, who weren't nice to Abuelito, but now they're like, hey, where's Abuelito's money?
He was our favorite,
right? So what happens? You have no will,
right?
You have nothing to show for it. What happens in this case?
Unfortunately, it's a very common scenario. You know, I come from a Cuban family. We don't talk about wills and trusts and, you know, people passing.
Oh, my God. Knock on wood. Can you imagine? No one has this discussion.
We don't talk about that. Unfortunately, my cousin and I, you know, we're of right sound of mind. And, you know, we've sat down with our grandmother who's healthy. But you never know, right? I mean, I have a wills and trust in place and I'm young and healthy, thank God. But you never know, right? You never know what life is coming at you.
Of course.
But too often, you know, we have don't worry, I love you, I'm leaving everything to you. It's all taken care of. But who knows what this document is, where this document exists, if it even exists, who has a copy. So, you know, you run into those cases where, you know, a loved one, and you know their intentions of that loved one was to leave you their property. They meant it with every ounce of their being. But there's no proof. And without proof, there's nothing.
You're kind of SOL, right?
That's it.
Dang.
So
te jodiste.
Pretty much. Pretty much. God. And it's really sad because, and I'll put this example, you hear about a lot of, divorces. Oh, we're ending amicably. Well, it's not really amicable. There's no, if you're ending a marriage, there's no really nice way to end it, right? There's always going to be something that comes up. And it's the same with family. When someone passes, maybe you didn't have a good relationship with that person, but now all of a sudden, you were so close to that person. And those people start coming out of the woodworks.
Pero no, Janina, no. Abuelito me dijo que el testamento estaba en la caja de zapatos.
And who's going to look for that box?
Él me dijo que estaba ahí. I can go. If you let me go to his house, I'll find it.
Yeah, but who's going to
tell the judge? Tell the judge, Janina. What can we do?
In Florida, I will tell you, if you're contesting that there's a will, there is no actual case law out there saying you can go into that property and look for the will. There is no case law out there.
You've got yourself a case of first impression, which is not a compliment.
Right.
It's a real headache.
It's a real headache, and nobody wants to be the one making the wrong call. And by nobody, I mean the judges. The judges don't want to be making the wrong call on cases of first impression. So
tell us a little bit about that from the bench's standpoint. What's the risk, right? Because they hear you, they're hearing the human story. Wow, he told them. They might even find you credible. But what's on the other side of that fear for that judge?
Right. So, their fear is being overturned. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. You got creative.
Let's say you believe Abuelito and you want to go look for that shoebox in your house. Okay, well, now you have to go to the judge, present to your who you are to the judge. Let the judge know, I thought he was my grandfather my whole life, but really he's just my godfather. We had a conversation, he told me about the shoebox. I kind of want to go look for it. No one's presented the shoebox, right? The rightful heirs, and rightful, I'm saying in quotation marks. they're not presenting in the shoebox. No one knows where this will is.
Right. And they might even come in and say, hey, we looked in the shoebox that this guy says, and there's nothing there.
Exactly. If
Right.
they even allegedly find a shoebox.
Right. You're my client will tell you, but what's the harm? Let me look anyway. But,
Right.
but the judge is like, the harm is
they don't want to be overturned.
Right.
And that's, it's a real problem. And that's, in all cases, a first impression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any judge making that first call on kind of allowing something that hasn't happened in the past, it's scary. It really is, because, then it goes up to appeals, and, you're going up to the DCAs and
Right.
the Supreme Court, and you don't know where it's going to end, and you don't know where, so I think the judge sees it as erring on the side of caution. If there's no case law on point, you know what? There's no will. There's no evidence of a will.
Just
you know
keep it
what?
rolling.
Just keep going.
Right.
Keep the case in probate. Sorry, you're out of luck. You should have asked for a copy, or asked the judge, asked the attorney to see if there was an attorney involved in drafting the will and gotten a copy. But if you had a trust and an attorney had a copy of this trust, guess what? You're not going in front of a judge. That property is coming straight towards you.
Amazing.
So we
Straight
need
to
to
the end
get
of the rainbow.
abuelito and abuelitas and, a lot of, people that just, don't even want to talk about wills and trusts to understand the importance of having it just for, it's a difficult time. I don't even want to think of this moment in my life. And you don't want to be dealing with courts and having to deal with the passing of a loved one and now arguing with someone that maybe wasn't even a good person, in their lives, and now fighting with them over a piece of property. And it's not even about the property. It's the principle. It's getting that from your family and complying with their last will and testament. That's what you want.
Right. Well, listen, I think with that, we covered some of the fundamental basis there. So I want to get right into the chisme. We have the part of the show. We have the sazón completo, where we put a little fun into these matters. And today, we always have three things. We have news, disciplinary actions, because why not? We got to learn a little bit. And we have an AI update. And today we'll start with the news, which, given our theme, is going to be the estate of Mr. Jimmy Buffett, the Margaritaville guy, the chill vibes guy.
You're making me want to go down to the Keys for the
I
weekend.
I know. He did, Hawaiian shirts, guitar, platinum blonde hair, making hella money.
Yep.
Puts together the will, puts together the trust, has a $275,000 estate, and still they end up in litigation. So I was looking into a little bit of the details of this case, thinking, wow, there is some ongoing disputes. It's in both in Florida and California. The suit in Florida was filed first by there's two trustees.
Mm-hmm.
There's Jane Buffett, the widow, and Richard, I think Monzetto or Monsanto, not Monsanto. That's that's something. I'm sorry, Richard. I'm sorry. I forgot your name. It starts with an M. Richard M. I'm going to call him. And I saw that there's a lot interesting about the case. So one thing is he files his complaint in Florida, in Palm Beach County, and the next day, the widow files in California. Who drafts a complaint in a day?
I don't know. I think this was, all pre-done.
This has been cooking. This has been cooking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you're going to shoot, I'm going to shoot.
But they wanted to, rapid fire, send both out at the same time. That's what I think.
I think so too. We're reading between the lines here is, some inside baseball, but I was looking at the complaint, and this is a $275 million trust. I put 275 million in a cash account at Wealthfront, and I make 4% right now, which is like 11 million a year. Apparently, this trust was yielding like 2.2 million for the widow.
Right.
2.2 million.
Yeah.
And the financial advisor was billing 1.75, which is like, okay, fine. These people make like 1% on the corpus of the trust or whatever, which would put it at around 2.2. Not that those are the hardest earned 2.2 million ever, but it's
his job.
It's his job. Like,
right.
I get it. It's my job. We have fees that perhaps to some people sound unreasonable, but it's what we do. But I was looking at it, I was like, man, 2.2. Again, that's a nice living, right, off interest, but when you should be making 11.
Right.
So what is going on there, do you think? I mean, maybe some things were tied up in real estate or some non-liquid assets, because it would seem to me like you don't have to be a very sophisticated market trader to make 4%
right
on a couple
no
million.
it seems there's a lot of issues. I think there was they're contesting more of the the validity in the terms of like the onset also. Was there all the elements met in making a proper will? I think they have some question on that.
Interesting.
Reading into the case again, I feel like there's so much out there on it, so it's
Right.
hard to keep track of what's going on. I think a lot of it is also tied up, royalties, properties, that kind of stuff. So, I'm interested.
Got it. This isn't like crypto,
right?
That's just going to yield
right
year over year. Got it.
So I'm interested to see how it plays out, only because, 2.2, it's just
right.
not.
It's not. I'm going to be honest. My knee jerk was, the widow wants to get the trustee out of the way. So she get right. That was my knee jerk. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. Then I looked at it and I was like, that widow's getting robbed.
Right,
I was like,
exactly.
What is going on here? Right.
She stuck by him for a long time.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But then, this guy's been his financial advisor for like 30 years, Jimmy Buffett. And, and he just died in 2023. So it's like, were the returns different? And so perhaps he was just doing fine now. Maybe now it's a kind of a different market. It's a transitioning market now. So, but going into the weeds and perhaps also what we can learn from the case, it's a little bit like choose your trustees wisely.
Right, correct, 100%. And that was one of the things that, I also wanted to kind of touch upon on the ways to, when you're avoiding probate. Your beneficiary designations. This include, any person that you might have helping you with your properties, with, your financial advisors, people that have knowledge of the items you have, the dollar amounts you have invested, any IRA you might have. All these are really important to look at and to consider. And when you're selecting someone that's going to oversee this and manage this and see it to the end, it's very important. And it seems, they were together for very many years, you know him. So
you would think she would know.
I'm assuming they have a very good relationship with, this also the financial advisor.
Right.
They seem to, I'm sure she's probably met him. But, it's also hard to know, what was... we don't know what happened in that room. What was he thinking? May he rest in peace. But, you never know what's happening behind closed doors, So, going back to like an Abuelito case, he might be telling you he's leaving you everything. But in reality, he met with his lawyer, his financial advisor, and he kind of distributed his assets in a certain way.
Right.
So it's important to select someone you trust, have stuff saved, documented, given to the people that are going to be inheriting certain assets.
Yeah. And plan that this relationship they might not be buddies.
Correct.
In a couple of years when there's $275 million at stake. So what are the checks and balances? Like we get a lot of entrepreneurs that are 50-50 owners, no operating agreement, no plan for what's going to happen when we inevitably have a bad quarter. Right. Who has the final say? Right.
And that's why you need that tiebreaker or that attorney that has the record of everything that's been transpired throughout the relationship. Anything that you need that attorney or that third neutral party to know, so that, you can make sure you have a tiebreaker, you have someone that's going to be fair and distribute assets, or, in a case of, a dissolution of a company, you need to make sure that, it's not just, well, he said, she said. You have someone that's sitting there and saying, listen, these were the articles of incorporation. This is what you have. This is where you failed. This is where you failed. And here are your options, So the emotional side is kind of removed from it. And I think emotions play a lot into litigation of any case. And you can say, maybe not in insurance. There's emotions in insurance. There's emotions in every case. Right. Everyone wants to have their day in court, as they should. And I think it's important that you have a neutral party, whether it be a lawyer, whether it be a financial advisor, a third person kind of checks and balance to take out the emotion of, whatever's happening in that case.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So with that, we're going to get into a little bit of a combination. The sazon completo today is going to have the pepper and the ají combined. So we're doing a little bit of disciplinary action and the AI updates together. So we typically do disciplinary actions because we want to help lawyers who are well-meaning not mess up doing the things that typically go wrong.
Right.
And we do the AI update because now, being knowledge workers, if you're not dealing with AI, you're done.
Right.
You're done. So you have to have that AI hygiene, right? You have to know, you have to be up to date on the latest. You gotta work on your protocols, on how do I do this so it's maximally productive for the firm and for the clients. But how am I also doing it responsibly? Because by definition, you're using AI because you're not doing everything, right? You're not typing letter by letter.
What do you
right?
mean you're not doing everything?
Well, you're
This is not what the
you're
world I come from.
This is why I have you here for this discussion, right? By definition, you're using AI because you're condensing information, you're synthesizing information, you're going through volumes at a much quicker clip. And guys, it's 2025.
It's fantastic.
Okay, it's 2025 and it's fantastic.
It is.
But it is not cute anymore. It is not 2022 anymore when you cite to a case that doesn't exist. All right? That shit flew in 2021 when ChatGPT was a new thing, and you're like, ay, pobrecito. Oh, he was busy.
He fell for it.
He was working 80 hours. He didn't check the case. Guys, listen to me. They will cut your head off.
As they should.
Okay? It is gross negligence, right? So when this case came up about Deloitte, it's not strictly speaking a legal case, but when I saw Deloitte was paying back $400,000
Right.
for citing to hallucinated cases in their very expensive deliverable, I was like, man, that's a whole department that's getting canned.
Right.
And for what?
Yeah.
Right? This was the easiest fix, right? And so this tells me, okay, like, let's discuss process, right? So what is ChatGPT good for? It is a tremendous issue spotter,
100%.
right? One of the things that we do in our practice that we gauge, frankly, that they test in the bar exam, that they test in every law firm or every law school final is, can you read a passage and spot the issue?
Right.
Okay? Which is what we're doing at consults. Frankly, AI is a superpower, right? So it doesn't, there's things that very highly specialized counsel, right? So I think the synergy between the two, it's like, here's a fact pattern, what legal issues arise, and then experience tells you, oh, but where's the conflict there?
Right.
Isn't there a conflict? Isn't there something? Oh, yes, you're right. Da, 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 da. But you can, you give somebody a fact pattern, even if they're experienced counsel, they might, they see the big meat and potatoes, right?
Okay.
But that might be 25%.
Right. 100%.
AI gets that 75% of issues that you're like, dude, I didn't know about constructive trust. I didn't know about an equitable lien on that property that is tangentially related because he stole your money and then he bought a pool, right?
Yeah.
So use it to issue spot,
right?
Which I hope we're doing. Then it's like, okay, you've issue spotted. Don't let ChatGPT do your legal research.
Correct.
Guys, if you're a legal professional, you should have Lexis AI. You should have Westlaw. You should have an AI tool that's connected to a database that's going to give you some blue links to actual sources that you can look at, okay? And don't take the Lexis AI synthesis at its word, right? What is the other superpower that ChatGPT has is summarizing volumes and volumes, right?
This is one of the most amazing things I wish we had 15 years ago.
So back in the day, you're studying a new issue, right? Maybe you've not done probate before, but you've got a case and you're like, okay, what are the main cases on this? And you realize like there's 25 cases I got to read to know my elbow from my asshole on this thing, right? So nowadays, what can we do? We pull the 25 cases.
Right.
We put them in there 5 at a time. Tell me the facts, the holding, tell me where it fits in, the relevance, rank it from least likely to most likely that we'll cite to it in our deliverable. I'm not saying don't read the case. I'm saying use the superpower
100%.
and pull those foundational authorities, right? The statutes. Build yourself a research folder that has everything. If you do that, there's exactly 0% chance you're going to cite to something that's hallucinated.
100%. And as long as you're double checking, you need to get, instead of doing it the way we used to do it, we would read about 15 cases to get to one that was remotely close to our issue.
Oh my God.
And then from that, it would lead to,
you would pick the next
and
thing.
then we would pick the next case. And I mean, I was, when I was drafting any document, I was reading 20 to 25 cases to see which would be the most applicable to my case.
Right.
So now we have the benefit of AI, which I love, because instead of just taking you on a rat race and trying to figure out what is the best case, it'll summarize, it'll give you a few cases, and then it's up to you to go in and really see how that case is applicable to yours. And if you use that in your fact checking and your, cross-referencing, you're going to be fine. You're not going to have this hallucinated case.
You can get the sense of the black letter law on any issue, and you can have the core cases and the periphery down packed in an afternoon.
This was not the way it was in the past.
Down to the details. And you could tell this thing and then the other thing that I think a lot of people don't, because it's okay, you have all this in theory, but how does it work in practice? How do you build a pleading? How do you build a motion based on this? And my solution to this is get obsessed about structure.
Right.
Before you sit down and write a motion, even before ChatGPT, you would stress the outline of the motion, right? So now you have this super brain that you can recruit to help you stress about the outline and make the most ideal outline and tell it okay, what cases are we going to be citing to in each part of this outline, right? And then you can tell it okay, we've got this crazy outline. We're going to start drafting the thing. Okay, we're drafting this part of the outline. You want to cite to these 5 sources. You skim the sources, make sure that they say what the thing says it says. And you tell it, draft this section, use the sources I've just attached. Don't be verbose. Don't sound like a generative AI. Right? Sound like you might be a busy lawyer. Be succinct, whatever. And out comes your section for this thing. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I mean, that is insane. That is an insane power. And with great power comes great responsibility. So what you have to do at the end is quality assurance, right?
100%.
Which is go back to the thing, tell it, we drafted this paragraph or this passage or this section. We cited to these authorities. Does every proposition that we cite to, is it substantiated by the authorities? Right. And by the way, is everything in quotes verbatim?
Right. Yes.
The thing paraphrases.
Right.
It's a paraphrasing machine.
Right.
So when you have it do something in quotes, make sure it's verbatim.
Right.
That's your bar license, right? If it's in quotes, that's what it says at that page on the thing.
Correct.
Right. It's not a paraphrase. So I think all in all, it's 2025. It's not cute anymore. I think if you get caught doing this, you kind of deserve it.
Right.
It's a little bit it's a little bit indefensible.
I think they put a lot of tools in place for it not to happen at this point.
Right.
I mean, I've tested AI, right? Because I think I'm so smart, right? I've been doing this for 15 years. So I'm I know exactly what this motion's supposed to say, and I know what law is supposed to cite.
Right.
So I've been draft this section of a motion for me. And when it does it correctly, I'm wow, I'm impressed. Right, so I think AI has come, a long way since it first started. Right. And it's just getting better. But it's on you. At the end of the day, it's your signature at the bottom of that page. Yeah. And it's your duty to represent your client. So you better make sure that what you're putting out there is exactly what it says it is.
And with that, Janina, it's been a real pleasure. I think I'm going to have you back. I think this is the best episode, if I don't say so myself, so far No, for real. I think, I loved everything about this. I think we broke our distance record here. I think I have a subconscious thing about how long it goes. And so I think this is the longest one. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back for another issue if you will have me.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next time. Bye-bye.